I don't know, 17 years we've been here, 18 years now, almost, 18 years. We've been doing sports radio here at WNST. We've not had a lot of these, if this, then what happens to the Ravens' schedule on Sunday with the Redskins, and can the Orioles win in Toronto and then go to Arlington? But we're about to have that conversation, Luke Jones, and these are amongst my favorite conversations when I've considered all the sweat and blood and, being barred by the team and all the nonsense I've been through with the team. All I ever really wanted them to do, and it sounds trite and it sounds corny, all I really ever wanted was for you to win, and they're winning. And while they're winning, we should celebrate that, and we all know how this goes. The Cubs could be eliminated a week from now, right? Or they could win the World Series a month from now. They're expected to win, but what's expected in October never happens. And, Luke, they're playing Game 7 on Tuesday night in Toronto. The kitchen sink will be brought out. It's an interesting brand of baseball to talk about, but they're there, they're alive, and I am not making any plans on Thursday or Friday other than being in Arlington, Texas.
Buck Showalter talks about this throughout, from the time spring training starts, throughout the season, and then you get into September. And if you're good enough in September where you're playing relevant games, you always talk about that chance of getting to roll the dice in October. And it really is. And look, are there years where the absolute best team wins? Yes. Are there years where the best team does not win and someone like the Kansas City Royals a couple years ago comes out of nowhere? That's the beauty of October baseball.
You need to be the Royals. Yeah. That's what you need to be.
The reality is the Orioles right now, they're not going to be a favorite. They're not going to be a favorite in Toronto. They're not going to be a favorite if they happen to move on and face the Texas Rangers in the division series. They won't be a favorite if they go on the upset the Rangers and play Boston or Cleveland in the ALCS. But that's the beauty of October. I mean, these are short series. In the case of the wild card game, it's a one-game playoff. It's, one team will have a little bit more than a coin flip advantage. I mean, that's typically how this works. And that's how baseball, that's the beauty of a 162-game schedule. The worst team in the league can beat the best team in the league. And certainly that's not the case here, but the Orioles have a chance. So you go up to Toronto, you roll the dice. As I said to you at the end of the Toronto series last week, even if the Orioles found themselves in the position where they were going back up to Rogers Center, they just took 2 out of 3. Why can't they go up there and win? That's the, why not, for lack of a better phrase, in 1989 and the exercising demons at Skydome way back when. But this is what you ask for as a baseball fan. This is what you play for 162 games as a club. And
this is why we get together every night all year and bitch about this, and we lament in Indianapolis on a cold day, like what the hell happened to our outfielder? What's he doing in Arizona? And
right.
and Gallardo and medical records and the old man and the off season and Chris Davis and is he in or is he out and Wieters and contracts and hey man, Wieters hit a couple of home runs to get them over the top over the weekend. Jimenez. I think he's going to play a role on Tuesday night, right? I mean, and Tillman, and for the pitchers, we could sit here from now until the game starts talking about, you and I being baseball nerds and been after this a long time, about the infinite possibilities of Tuesday night in this sort of hurried up Game 7 under duress, where the Orioles probably have better pitchers available.
You see how it works out. I mean, Ubaldo Jimenez, Chris Tillman. I mean, certainly Kevin Gausman pitched his ass off on Sunday in the Bronx when the Orioles needed it. I mean, he pitched like you need a number 1, number 2 kind of starter to pitch in that scenario. So, we won't see him on Tuesday, but it's all hands on deck. As much as you are at least thinking in the back of your mind of, okay, what do you do for the start of a division series? Ultimately, you have to get there. And that's what we talked about over this past weekend as far as the Orioles getting to Tuesday night. I mean, it sounds so cliche, but it really is all hands on deck. You go up to Toronto and you see how this plays out. And they just took 2 out of 3 from them. That place should not be one that they're completely intimidated by, despite how the last couple years have been overall there. And you see if you get the bats going, the way they need to be swinging, and we've seen them swing it a little bit better here of late than they had for large stretches of September, so that's a good sign. And you see if the pitching continues. As I wrote over the weekend before the ugliness that was Saturday, the Orioles are in this position because their pitching rose to the occasion in the final month of the season. I mean, their offense, we saw it go away on that last homestand that they had, where they had the frustration of the Boston series and not hitting against Tampa Bay and barely hitting enough against Arizona to get a 3-game sweep. But the one constant was how well they pitched, both their rotation and their bullpen, save for certainly the hiccups on Saturday. But you just go into this and you have fun with it. And as much as this season has been an absolute grind, and I know Buck Showalter talked about that in the post-game celebration at Yankee Stadium on Sunday, that this team was the epitome of grinding it out. I mean, you look at how they played in the first half of the season. I think back to they finished off that sweep in San Diego where I believe there were 16 games over 500 at that point in time at the end of June. And you're thinking, wow, this is really easy. I mean, this team has hit the ball at an incredible rate. Their bullpen's been excellent. The starting pitching has been, what we thought it would be, very problematic. But it looked like they were just going to cruise along and win 90-plus games and be in the postseason. And we know the second half of the year, it was an absolute grind. And they went through times where you thought they weren't going to win games, any more games, and you thought they were going to fall apart. And this team they had a way of answering back. It's not as though they had big, long winning streaks in the second half like they did in the first half, but every time it looked like they were hitting one of those ruts where you're starting to think, okay, the bottom's going to fall out. This is where they're going to completely fall apart. They found a way to then answer. They, take 4 of the next 5 or win a couple series back-to-back. And then finally in the month of September, what did they finally figure out they figured out how to win road games, which they hadn't done all year.
Well, now they're going to have to figure out how to win some road games here. Because,
sure.
They're going to have to win on the road to win the World Series because these series are, stilted toward that direction. They're going to be the underdog in every series they play for however long they play, right? Oh, but World Series, they would have home field advantage, right?
Yeah, they would have home field advantage in the World Series. But, it's just...
let us dream, dude. Don't laugh at me when I say that.
Oh, no.
Don't laugh at me.
It was more of a laugh in thinking how great that would be. There's no doubt about it, especially...
Hey, dude, if you can't talk about it now, when? If you can't talk about getting through a game here and going down to Texas and splitting a couple of games, we're not asking a lot here. Winning on Tuesday and splitting on Thursday and Friday in Toronto and Texas, dude, that's been done before. They're capable of this. They really are.
You get down to this point, it's all about who gets hot. I still hold true. The 2014 Orioles, I still feel were a better team than the 2014 Kansas City Royals. But they weren't in mid-October, and that's what matters at the end of the day because that's what everyone remembers. But it's all about who can get hot. And when you're looking at what's going, what the Orioles have going for them, their pitching is hot right now relative to what we've seen over the course of the whole season. Now, will that translate to October success? Maybe. I don't know if I'd bet my mortgage on it, but I'm not sure I would have bet my mortgage on Ubaldo Jimenez being their closest thing to an ace over the last few weeks with, a tip of the cap to Kevin Gausman, who had a couple rough starts, but some great ones as well. So, it's just there's so much unknown, and that's what makes it a beautiful thing. They're down to one of the final 5 teams standing in the American League, one of the final 10 teams standing in all of baseball. It hasn't been pretty. We always talk about winning ugly when it comes to the Ravens, right? Sunday's loss notwithstanding. That's kind of been the reputation for John Harbaugh teams over the last several years, even when they've been their most successful. And the Orioles have been a team that has won ugly. It's not supposed to be making the playoffs when you have one of the worst starting rotations in the American League like they did over the course of the season. It's not supposed to be that you're too reliant on the home run. But that's who they are, and they embrace it, and the sabermetricians don't like it in the off-season, and that's why they're picked 4th and 5th every off-season. And I can't say that I'm not guilty of that. I picked them to be 80 and 82 this year. But they've found a way more often than not in this Showalter Duquette era to exceed those expectations, and it's really a credit to Buck It's a credit to the things that Duquette does well, which I'm not always the biggest fan of things that he does, but he's done plenty well. And it's a major credit to those guys in the clubhouse. There is some impressive leadership. There's impressive talent, no doubt. But these guys, they've just, they've found ways to win, even when on paper it doesn't look like they should be the ones winning. And that's something to, despite all the frustrating times over the course of this season, it's something to really appreciate and embrace it. And, however long this lasts, whether it's Tuesday night or whether it lasts longer than that, enjoy it. Because as you pointed out before we even started talking, it's not many times this has happened over the last 30-plus years. And I was just thinking about it. I was born in '83. I was born 2 weeks before the Orioles last won the World Series.
And by the way, this is where I interject as they get off my lawn. I remember '83.
Well, you remember '83. I just turned 33 years old on Sunday, and these last 5 years is the best stretch of prosperity that the Orioles have had over that time. There was 96 and 97. There was 89. They had good records in 92 and 93. But
when you're talking about continued prosperity, this is it. This is the 69, 70, 71 period. Lack of championship, but these are Octobers where you have a chance, right?
This has been a sustained period of winning baseball. They haven't reached the ultimate goal, and they might not. But at the same time, they've given themselves a chance. Last year kind of being more the outlier because they had that terrible stretch in late August where they fell out of the race, but they still managed to finish 500, and they were able to make the playoffs now 3 of the last 5 years. That's not something to take for granted, given how the last 30 years of Orioles baseball have largely played out.
He is Luke Jones. You can follow him at Baltimore Luke on Twitter, as well as Luke at WNST.net. All right, so just any thoughts at all about this matchup and what this represents on the Blue Jays side, who, clearly they're happy to have the game played in their place, and it sort of came down to the wire for them as well. Nip and tuck. I mean, the whole week's been kind of crazy all the way around. Both of these teams had this sort of scratch and claw to get in. I mean, hell, I'm listening to Ken Rosenthal on Saturday morning talking about playing wild card games like next weekend or something by the time they figured out tiebreakers for 4 teams. But, Seattle and Detroit, as expected, wilted. Toronto and the Orioles, as expected, made the playoffs. But it certainly has been a circuitous route, I would say, for both these teams.
Yeah.
And they arrived sort of probably tired but energized on Tuesday night. And certainly the crowd up there is going to be into this one.
Oh, it's going to be hostile. There's no doubt about it. I mean, that crowd.
And that's just Geddy Lee.
They had the World Cup of Hockey last week, which I think bit into their attendance a little bit when the Orioles were up there. But it's going to be a hostile crowd, and this is fun. I mean, even over the weekend. I mean, you mentioned Seattle lost a marathon game against Oakland on Saturday night that knocked them out. You look at Detroit. How about some former Orioles, Chaz Rowe, Jim Johnson, Nick Markakis hit a home run on Saturday. I mean, Braves giving the Orioles and the Blue Jays some help for that matter with knocking Detroit out of it. But this was absolutely a grind of a last week or so, really the month. I mean, think about it. We've talked so much about the Orioles, but Toronto, their bats really fell off in September, and they really struggled. They didn't pitch as well as they had over the course of the season. I mean, it wasn't long ago we were talking about the Blue Jays looking like the clear-cut favorite to win the division, and we were talking more about the Orioles and the Red Sox being the wild card. So, that's a team that really had to kind of scratch and claw, give them some credit for the work they were able to do in Boston over the last couple of games of that series, because the Orioles were in position after Friday night. They were the top wild card, and a bad loss on Saturday that, as I wrote about it, WNST.net, some questionable decisions by Buck, some shoddy bullpen work, some defensive plays that weren't up to snuff. But the Orioles answered the bell on Sunday, and Matt Wieters, a couple big home runs, Kevin Gausman, Zach Britton finishes an incredible season. I mean, 47 for 47. I mean, it's just incredible.
Hey, and I'm hearing a lot of Cy Young buzz on that. I am. I mean, I don't think it's going to be discounted. I don't know that he's going to win, but I wouldn't bet against it.
I mean, he's got a chance. And I've shared my thoughts. I'm very lukewarm to the idea of a reliever winning the Cy Young Award because the reality is, Zach Britton ended up pitching, 67 innings compared to pitching over 200 for a starter. But what a historic season. 47 for 47, a 0.54 ERA. Apologies to Rick Porcello, who won over 20 games, and some other guys had some really nice years, but no starting pitcher had an unbelievable year in the American League. No one had a sub-2 ERA or even an ERA in the low twos for that matter, that, was over 200 innings, won 18, 19, 20 games. No one had that kind of a resume where you say, that's the guy, that's the Cy Young Award winner. So when you have that coupled with a historic season for a reliever, he's got a chance. So, we'll see how that plays out. I mean, that's postseason, post-World Series awards and all that, so we don't care quite as much about that right now. But, this matchup, I mean, these two teams know each other very, very well. There's no doubt about that. And we know the Orioles have had their issues big time in Toronto, but you look at recent memory and, hey, they won the last
I'll
two
take
there.
my chances.
Yeah,
I'll take my chances. I mean, I'd rather have the game be here. Obviously, everybody
Sure.
would. But
Sure.
all that being said, I don't think this is too tall a task. This seems to, right up Buck's alley, quite frankly, right? I mean, this feels like 48 hours with Buck going to Toronto where they were last, 5 days ago. This isn't, they're not intimidated. This is going to be a great ball game. My question is, who's going to be the hero here, Luke Jones? My nickel is on Chris Davis. I'm calling Chris Davis.
Well, he is certainly due. I mean, we have seen him, and he's had that hand issue. I'm guessing, and I'm not making an excuse, because clearly this guy has had his big-time struggles in the second half of the season. And let's face it, most of their offensive players had big-time struggles at some point in the second half of the season. But that hand issue, I think, has been a bigger issue for him than he's led on. But that would be nice to see. Why not Hyun-Soo Kim breaking Toronto's hearts yet again? That would be nice to see. But, hey.
As long as somebody pisses off Cito Gaston, it's a big victory. I want Geddy Lee to be very, very – I want him to be as heartbroken at 11 p.m. on Tuesday night as I was when the tour ended.
Right. But, as far as the unlikeliest of potential heroes, Ubaldo Jimenez, and we'll see if he gets the ball. I mean, I know Buck wasn't committing – after Sunday's game, and we'll find that out sooner rather than later, of course, with the game being Tuesday night. But wouldn't it be something, and wouldn't it just be such an Orioles thing if Jimenez, who was the worst starting pitcher in baseball in the first half of the season, I mean, the ERA was over 7, it was a disaster. Wouldn't it be something if he capped off what he's done over the last 6 weeks by pitching the Orioles into the division series? That would be something. But regardless of who starts, whether it's him, whether it's Tillman, whoever, you would think that bullpen is going to be a major factor. And I'll say this, Toronto's had their bullpen issues. The Orioles saw it, up close and personal last week at Rogers Center. One-game playoff situation with a unique roster and a big bullpen to use. I'll take my chances with Buck Showalter, even with the Wade Miley gaffe aside on Saturday that I still am baffled by, even a couple days later. I'll still take Buck Showalter any day over John Gibbons if you're talking about matching up a bullpen and trying to maneuver in trying to win a one-game winner-take-all scenario. I'll take the Orioles' chances from that regard, and beyond that, you just see which team is better on Tuesday night. It's very simplistic, but a one-game shot. You can try to talk about who has the edge. Baseball. Well, we'll see what happens.
That's why we watch the games, right?
Yeah. We talk about short series, whether it's a 5-game series in the division series, a 7-game series, as the Orioles painfully learned a couple years ago, can feel very, very short and get away from you quickly. You say that about those series, a one-game winner-take-all. Who knows what's going to happen?
We will be at Buffalo Wild Wings in Owings Mills on Tuesday night for the wild card game. We'll also be there on Monday night, as we are every Monday night, for our Best Seat in the House promotion, as well as the wing eating competition at halftime. So plenty of good stuff on our calendar this week. I've never wanted to go to Dallas so badly in all my life, but I do have flights to Toronto and Dallas this week. We're going to spin the dial or roll the dice and find out, what does Geddy Lee would say? Roll the bones, right? Why are we here? Because we're here. Nasty at WNST.net reaches me. He is Baltimore Luke, as well as Luke at WNST.net. I'm out in the Bayou Toyota Audio Vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn Radio app. We come in crystal clear. The morning newspaper reaches your email inbox at 7 a.m. each and every morning. That's powered up by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com. And last but never least, any breaking news, roster moves, trades, weird stuff. It'll all happen first on the WNST Tech Service, as it's done for 10 years. It is our best service. You know everything first. We give it away. It's all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. All you have to do is sign up at WNST.net. Nasty at WNST.net reaches me. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live on Facebook Live, as well as on our YouTube WNSTV channel. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore. And we never stop talking Baltimore sports.